Okay.
I go to here. Okay, and then how's it look?
That looks great.
Okay, excellent. All right, I'm gonna escape. Ooh, ooh. Okay, exit.
Well, 20 things about, oh, I like that.
Stop sharing.
I like that. So I am going, so we have Dr. Adebola
Yeah.
waiting in the room. I think that we should start on time and let people go because we can work this out. So I'm going to introduce you, and it is Janetta Lynn, right?
Lien.
Janetta Lien. Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm saying that right.
Disappeared. Okay.
All right. So
oh, I think they went away, but they'll come back.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they will come back. So yeah, I was thinking since it'll have to be on demand because people can only go to 2 schools, you know, but then they can always watch the videos back.
Yes, yeah, they can always watch it back to back for sure. So okay, so I'm just going to
here.
Admit.
Yeah, there we go. Hello.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have been enjoying the Rise Parent Power Conference sessions, the Parent Power sessions, and now we are in the school fair portion. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Gina Parker Collins. I am an independent school mom leader, founder of Resources in Independent School Education. And I am really thrilled to introduce you to Janetta Lien, who is the Director of Admissions at the Browning School, a single-sex all-boys school in Manhattan. So I'm just going to take it away. Take it away.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Gina. And as Gina said, I'm Janetta, but you can call me Janet.
Hello.
Hi, Janet Lien, and I'm actually the Director of Enrollment. My colleague Kelly West, that's okay, we changed our structure a few years ago, so everybody's still getting used to it. My colleague Kelly West, the Director of Admission, and I am the Director of Enrollment, but together we work on all of the admission processes for the school. So I'm very happy to have you here with us, and thank you.
I'm gonna jump in right here. I think that there's a nice distinction to be able to elucidate for folks around the difference between the Director of Admissions and the Director of Enrollment. And yeah,
sure, happy to do that. So you may have noticed in recent years that independent schools have been moving to what we call an enrollment management model. So that is actually something that trickled down from the higher ed, really. So if you're looking at how colleges and universities are managed, that's kind of the idea there. Enrollment management is really about all spokes of the wheel, everything that kind of drive enrollment at a school, right? So whether that's retention, so working with our current families on how they're experiencing our school, whether that's working on admission, that's bringing families who don't know much about our school into our school and assess candidates as we go, whether that's marketing. So how are we talking about our school? How is our school seen if somebody was just Googling us? What are they seeing? How are we telling our story? And really it's backed by the idea here is to really back it with data. So to look at what our past data may tell us, what all schools data may tell us, dig into those numbers and try to tell a story so that we can make decisions as a school that is responsive to what's going on in the world. So there's no time like the present for enrollment management, and this pandemic age has taught us that the numbers can really help elucidate, you know, our decisions, if you will. Yeah, but Kelly and I work together to sustain that effort. I think the goal is that she will oversee all the processes, but I do assist with middle and upper school admission processes. And then I handle all school enrollment and the retention committee. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Well, so I am going to spend a few minutes just talking a little bit about Browning. I'm going to share my screen just so you can have something to look at and a couple of photos, if you will, and to kind of guide the presentation along. And if you have questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat, or feel free to ask, since we're a small group anyway. So I'm sure we can jump in and have a chat about Browning. So Browning is located just 422 steps away from Central Park. We are in one campus, one building on East 62nd Street in Manhattan. Browning has approximately 415 boys from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. 38% of, 38% of our students are students of color. We have about 15 boys in a homeroom and 2 teachers in each kindergarten class. I should have actually moved on to my next slide, 20 things about Browning in 20 minutes, and Browning by the numbers, if you will. So again, we have 15 boys in a homeroom and about 2 teachers each in kindergarten. There's a lead teacher and an assistant teacher. And all school, we have a 7-to-1 student-teacher ratio. We have over 60 clubs and organizations going from lower, middle to upper school, and that includes 6 affinity and alliance groups serving all our boys. We are also very proud of our K-12 service learning curriculum and opportunities for our boys to do outreach and to give back to the city. We have a full suite of character education classes and programs, and we are very committed to the social emotional development in boys. Folks may be asking, why a boys' school? We think that in a time of changing gender and cultural expectations, a boys' school may seem at first even old-fashioned, right? But at Browning, we feel that we teach the competencies that allow boys to adapt to these changes while remaining true to themselves and their values. We are committed to providing our students with the skills and dispositions that will make them into good men that the world needs today. That's why our tagline is today's boys and tomorrow's men. We really feel that that is something that we are responsible to do as a boys' schools, to help these young boys, I guess, become men that will contribute to the world. Our faculty are boy experts. We follow evidence-based educational practices to make sure that faculty and staff receive ongoing professional development for teaching, coaching, and mentoring young men. Most importantly, we know and we love our students, and we believe deeply in our mission to create men of intellect and integrity, and boys who want to contribute meaningfully to the world. In our school, boys can be whatever they want. They can play an instrument, they can sing in the chorus, they can debate, they can be on the robotics team, they can play on a sports team, and I can pluck any young man from our halls, and any one of them will tell you that they're involved in a whole range of things, right? So we feel that a boys' school allows boys to kind of really explore that full range of who they are and who they want to be without stigma. So we're very proud of that. And finally, in a boys' school, we feel that boys can feel seen, they can feel understood and heard. They are not seen as broken girls. And I say this with some, I want to qualify what I mean by that, is that I think sometimes, boys in a co-ed classroom may be asked to behave in particular ways, and that may not always be what they need in that moment. And as a boys' school, we're able to kind of work with that. And they reach milestones at all different times. So we don't expect them to hit certain things, but we do want them to keep growing and keep learning. And so we really think that a boys' school gives a real sense of belonging, if you will. Let me talk a little bit about our program highlights. So in our lower school, naturally we, like many of our partner schools, really focus on developing literacy skills. Our enrichment program capitalizes on student strengths, and we work to meet every boy's need. We offer small group instruction to ensure the boys are able to develop competency in phonetics, fluency, comprehension, and inferencing skills. Our math program is also rich and extremely well developed. In the lower school, the boys engage in Singapore math. And by the time they get to the upper school, our suite of programs run, we go from geometry to algebra 2 to pre-calculus. And then in senior year, you can take either calculus or in 2 forms. We offer AB and BC Calc, as well as statistics. The science program, so I have to say I was a science teacher at Browning for 7 years before transitioning into doing admission work. And our science program is phenomenal. And we have a very vibrant green team. So it's even led to these extensions, if you will, these clubs where students are taking their science that they're learning in the classroom and applying them in the real world. Sorry.
Yeah. Do you mind if we, since we are a small group,
yeah.
So the question is, for kindergarten, what's the student to teacher ratio for kindergarten?
Yep. So we have about anywhere from 14 to about 16 students in each class, and each room has about 2 teachers, right? So we're looking at a 7 to 8 students to each teacher ratio. And they break out into half groups for electives. So they do break out into half groups for science, for reading, for music. And so you can really kind of dive deeply with the kiddos.
Do you want another one? You want another?
Sure. Why not?
So we're going to be in. Okay, we letting someone else in. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Janetta Lien, who is the Director of Enrollment from Browning here. And so we have a really great slide presentation going on, but we're also answering some questions in between. And this is the DEIB question. So when you said, did you say 38% students of color?
Correct.
Okay, so most families of color really want to know, okay, so what does that mean? How is that broken down? And sometimes I find that schools are like, they are really not that direct with that information. So I don't know if you can be forthcoming.
Yes, and I apologize. I should have that number right off the top of my head because I actually did crunch it recently because it was posed to me as what is your percentage of non-majority minority students, right? So by that, I think you take out Asian Americans, for example, and you look at the number of students. And I'm sorry, but I think I have to get back to you on that one because 38% is across the board, and that's
yeah, I know I'm putting you on the spot there. I still have a hard time getting that information from my school, but that is that you had 30% more, you have 38% of non-majority families there, which definitely adds to the vibrancy and the profoundness of the school community. So
yeah. I'll just add that if you look at the activity around our affinity and alliance groups, so we have a multicultural club, we have the African American Students Alliance, we have an Asian Students Alliance, which I'm a part of, we have a Latina Sociedad, which is for our Latinx students. All of these groups are extremely active. We have a gender studies club and a gender and sexuality alliance, and these are all led by boys. So the boys are the leaders of these groups, and they run all of the activities, and they organize a lot of things for the school. So I think that it's very much a very big part of our school life, and we're proud of that as well. It's a great question, and I'm sorry, I apologize that I don't have that off the top of my mind.
But you can always go visit and communicate with Janetta if you want to get that breakdown. She'll share with you later. Okay, let me let you get back to your program. Your program highlights.
Got it. I hear you. Thank you so much for the questions, though. So we were talking a little bit about the math program, and then we started talking a little bit about the science program. So in our, I wanted to highlight a few things in our science program that I think were really interesting. All our middle schoolers participate in the math science research project. And so they work with their math teacher and their science teacher, develop a project, and they present it. Typically, this is done in the spring. So this year, of course, we had to go to a virtual setting, much like we're doing today. And so we just held our first STEAM Expo, and the science and the math departments were incredible. They basically turned our school into a virtual, it's like going on a virtual tour. So when you go in, you're in the lobby, and then you just kind of follow the map where you find different students' projects all over. So we called it a STEAM fair because we also invited art displays, as well as any kind of engineering displays that the boys have done, whether it's a game that they designed or a robot doing something cool. So we put it up for 2 days this past week, and it was a huge hit. Our 9th grade biology class participates in a service learning and research trip every year, and unfortunately this year was canceled as well. But basically what they do is they spend the year designing a research project that they will carry out when they go to Eleuthera in the island school in Eleuthera. So they spend a week there. They engage in marine biology research, and they conduct their own data collection and all of that stuff, put together a paper, present it, and then they also do participate in service learning projects while they are there. That is a really unique program. That class, along with our advanced genetics research class, which is pretty much like a college level research class, 3 papers have been chosen to be published in the Journal for Emerging Science Research published by Harvard. So we're really proud of their work. They're doing some really significant research. I saw some really interesting DNA barcoding of sushi, for example, right? So they ordered sushi from different restaurants and coded their DNA to determine whether the fish were properly labeled. So I thought that was a really interesting project, if you will. Turning to the arts, because we really do, like I said, you know, we really want to help the boys explore their full selves. So I think the arts is very important to us. We have a full suite of fine arts classes, kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. Even in the lower school, the electives, what we call specials, aren't just specials, like they meet as regularly as core subjects, right? So they are getting the full suite of music classes and lots of performing opportunities, being able to draw, to paint, to do ceramics in our ceramics studio. Music starts in kindergarten, and you can join an ensemble. We have 2 orchestras. We have a middle school chorus and an upper school chorus. Just as a statistic, about half of our upper school is in the chorus. And I think that it's very unique in a boys' school that many boys are singing, right? And so and they're amazing. I love hearing them perform. And we have a very special hit group called the Akka Panthers. That's our a cappella group. And they are really terrific as well. We also deeply value public speaking. So we have drama classes. We have public speaking class is actually a mandatory class that all 9th graders have to take. And then they have the option to pick up 2 electives in their sophomore year in the high school. So we have one of our traditions is a public speaking competition. And by the time you're in high school, you can perform original repertoire. So you can actually write something that you will present.
Janetta, can I ask a question along the lines of all of the great things that these boys and young men can do that maybe, I'm wondering, would they not normally do these things if they were in a co-ed environment? And this goes to a question that's asked, a parent is wondering if not socializing with girls in an early age could be a problem. I mean, do you see benefits and challenges to that? And what studies, because I'm sure this is like the #1 most frequently asked question, right? Like, you know, how is it not socializing with girls at an early age? And, you know, I guess, what are the benefits? What research have you seen?
Yeah, that's a really terrific question. I've seen several studies, right? So, and a lot of it, and I'm going to misquote some of them, but there's an age where, you know, children ask why, and their curiosity is super steep. You know, they're so interested in the world around them. And then right around the middle school is really where it starts to level off, and they start to kind of turn inwards. Some of it is appropriate. It is developmental. That just kind of comes with that territory. But if we are in a situation where we have always cultivated them to be open, to be talking with us, to be engaging in a social emotional program, whether they know it or not, right? Because we're not going to be like, okay, boys, it's time for your SEL class. You know, it's a lot of the things that we do with them is embedded into the program and embedded in how we work with them. But if we're cultivating that relationship from when they are young, I think that kind of it gives them a chance to, there's a norm there for them to be tapping into feelings or how they're experiencing something and putting it into words and sharing it with a trusted adult. That is extremely important, trying to sustaining that level of curiosity and purpose as they go, right? I think that, you know, I want to quote my head of school, who quoted another head of school that said, you know, a boys' school is a place, if a school can hug you back, it's a boys' school. Like this is a place that hugs you back. I think when you walk into our classrooms, and we very much hope to be able to show folks, you know, the liveliness of our classrooms and the way that boys engage in the classroom. I think that you'll see that the safety net there is love, and we're not afraid to tell them, and they're not afraid to share it. And I think that we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose that when they feel like they have to behave or be cool in a particular way in order to feel socially accepted, right? So I think that in that way we kind of level that playing field for them. I hope that kind of gets at it a little bit. There's actually a number of different pieces of literature out there that really were, I think the end result is really looking at, how do boys become men and what does that mean for them? But that journey needs to be extremely, needs attention, right? So that the outcome can be good. And then these boys are contributing to their world. So that's kind of my take on that.
And so I know you have a slide presentation here, and I'm gonna let you finish it, but yeah. it kind of sparked another question for me. There must be things, when you think about single-sex education, you think about boys' education, the ability for a boy to cultivate a sense of self and maybe come out of the stereotype of what a man is like supposed to be, like, you're not supposed to be interested in arts, or that might not be cool to be interested in arts. How do single-sex boys' schools at a young age kind of make up for the fact that there aren't girls in the classroom? Do they feel that that's really not necessary to have a full academic experience? Like, how is that made up for? Or is that not even really thought of? We're just centering boys, there's really no, like we center girls in a girls' school, and we don't have to, apologize for that. There's highlights to that.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if I could share my experience here, because I think, I don't think I thought of that until I started teaching boys, right? So I full disclosure, I went to a girls' school growing up, and then I went to a co-ed, high school for the last 2 years, and then college, and then I taught co-ed, and I thought I was a pretty good teacher. And I was fortunate enough to land a job at Browning, where I was teaching 4th grade, 6th grade, and juniors and seniors. And I will be honest, my first few weeks there, I was like, what's wrong with these boys? Like, I was like, why is nothing that I used to be able to do really well working here? And it took a good friend and a few conversations with a really good friend who also taught at Browning. She and I also taught at the co-ed school from where I was prior to working at Browning. And she said, well, talk me through some of your classroom procedures. And so I talked to her, I told her what I used to typically do with the boys. And she said, okay, that's good. That's good. And then she stopped and she said, you know what you're doing? You're teaching the way you learned, which is as a girl. And it caught me completely off guard, and I thought she was crazy. And she, and then she started explaining to me some of the things that she learned, right? So I teach science. There's a natural avenue here for boys love to work with their hands. So do girls. I don't want to say that girls don't like hands-on work, but girls are much more prepared to kind of hunker down and take notes, right? But the boys, I had to, I almost had to switch the way I did things, right? So rather than building up to the lab, I might start with the lab, because they're all about that discovery. They're all about doing things and observations. And if you just give them some agency, gave them some voice, they will then realize, oh, so now she's teaching us the notes. That's what I saw in that lab. So even just changing the processes of teaching over, right? I did more station learning. So I would set up stations around the classroom, give them some instructions, and they could kind of navigate the room themselves. Sometimes a boy might be having a hard morning, and I'll say, do you need to take a walk? Or, or do you need a glass of, do you need some water? And usually that's all they need. They just need to kind of stretch their limbs a little bit. And usually as soon as they're out, they want to be back in because they don't want to miss anything. The most gratifying classes I have is when the bell rings and the kids go, what? It's time. Can't believe it's time to go. And it happens more often than you think. And, I think that, again, I don't want to generalize or stereotype, but I think that, there comes a point in time when even if they loved learning, they can't look like they really love it as much.
Right.
I love capturing that energy. I think I tossed oobleck in a classroom with them because I wanted to demonstrate. Oobleck, by the way, this got nerdy, but cornstarch mixed with water, and it kind of creates this fluid that's actually a great representation for the mantle. So if it's flowing slowly, if it moves slowly, it flows. But high velocity, it's very hard. So you can actually toss it and it will not break apart. But if you stop moving, it'll drip through your finger.
Yeah.
And we were making a mess, but boy, it was fun. And once I figured out how to have fun teaching these boys, it was like I hit a whole new degree of engagement with my students, right? So I never dreamed when I started out as an educator that I would become this huge proponent for boys' education, but I've seen what it's done. And it is not, so rather than to look at it as a loss, so rather than to look at a single-sex school as a deficit, I actually think it is a benefit. And I think, can boys do well in co-ed schools? Absolutely. But I think single-sex schools are there to serve them, right? Now, that's not to say that when you graduate from Browning, you suddenly don't know how to talk to the opposite sex.
Right. I think that is really at the heart of what most people really worry about, like that, or, identity issues. And, we're going to just be for real, like, right?
Yep. No, I've been asked, I've been asked this question, does going to a boys' school make it more likely for you to become, gay? And then there's a conversation to be had about, homosexuality, for example, right? But I think, I think that it's not that, I think that we help them become so much more comfortable in themselves that whenever Browning boys go out and do, inter-school things. So Browning is a part of Interschool, which is a group of predominantly single-sex schools. So if Browning and Collegiate are the two all-boys schools, Brearley, Chapin, Spence, and Nightingale are 4 girls schools, and then Dalton and Trinity are in there as well because both of those schools had a single-sex division in their past. So together we share programs. Our kids do things together. They perform together. They go on trips together. They do service learning together. So there is a lot of interaction, and I can tell you that the Browning boys are kind of known to be the ones that kind of break the ice. Like they're very good because they're so comfortable. They're so easy to be around. A retired head of one of the girls' schools said that if she was to be stuck in an elevator, she would want it to be with a Browning boy. Okay. So that's something that always makes me very proud. And I once probed her. I said, what made you say that? And she said, they'll talk to you about anything. They'll pass the time. They don't get all awkward. So I think this narrative of without socialization with girls, that you come out hampered is actually not what I have seen in my time at Browning.
Thank you for letting us divert. Okay, so we can get back to you. I'm sure that there's more.
Yeah, just a few more. I wanted to have something to share with folks so that there's something that we can talk about, right? So I know I've gone a little bit into the weeds, but I want to touch on athletics as well. So again, PE meets just as frequently as other specials, if you will. And then competitive sports start in the 5th grade. And by the time you're in the upper school, you can try out for the varsity or the junior varsity teams. We have 8 sports, and on some years, we even can field additional teams, and it's really based on student interests. So for example, fencing was one, and fencing is actually offered through interschool. So that is one of the co-ed opportunities that's available to our boys. And we have a table tennis team that was fielded this year. We had a ping pong club for the longest time, and the boys said, hey, can we form a team? And so they did, and they formed the team, and we found a league to play in, and they ended up doing pretty well, which we're very proud of. We have some unique classes as well, just to round out the program highlights, some of the things I think are really interesting. We have a radical empathy class, a Panthers Connect class. So where are the Panthers? That's our mascot. And Panthers Connect is an opportunity for older boys and younger boys to interact. So the older boys are in charge of that program, and they have an advisor for that. We have a class called On Purpose, which is taught by our head of school to sophomores. We have a philosophy class, modern political thought, a huge range and array of English literature electives as well. So those are just some programmatic highlights.
Okay, sorry, I'm curious. Yeah. What is On Purpose? Because that sounds like a pretty intense class. Like, what's that?
Yeah, our head of school teaches it. So our schools for choose are honesty, dignity, curiosity, and purpose. And purpose is the ultimate, right? It's how do we help boys find their purpose, right? And it sounds like a really big existential question, but there is something just as important as being purposeful about the task just before you. And I think it's that sort of mindful intentionality that our head of school really wants to kind of get at with them. So I know that weekly they'll do a reading or they'll watch a video, and he will have a discussion with them and invite their responses. It's actually a really intimate class. I mean, I know it sounds heavy duty, but it's a really intimate class, and it's a way, it's a wonderful way for him to be engaged with the boys in the classroom setting. He really misses teaching. So I think this is a wonderful chance for him to kind of be in a classroom with the boys in a dedicated class. But aside from that, he also sets up regular lunches with the boys. So it's not like this is the only chance that he meets with the boys. But I think it's a wonderful class purpose.
Oh,
Yeah.
guess what? So I do want to pivot because, we want to address, the audience. So this
Yeah.
one particular mom wanted to stay a little bit more on the lower level highlights.
Yep.
And, why don't we, the other folks in the room, can we let us know what grade levels that you're interested in? So this mom, my pre-K son is many years away from middle school, but the rising third grader is closer to the middle school chorus. It's closer to middle school. Is there a chorus in the lower level?
In the lower level, they sing all the time in class. So it's so we do this. We do several performances throughout the year, and I think the biggest one is really our holiday program. That's the end of the school year. And in the lower school, every grade does something and does 2 songs at the holiday program. And some of them are playing instruments to accompany the ensemble. So there is no lower school chorus, but every grade basically is its own chorus. Whether you can sing or not, you're singing. And I think that's it's actually really super cute. Again, the holiday program.
And we just had another mom who just mentioned that she's first grade as well. So I think we are pretty. But it's good to go forward thinking as well too, because that's going to be your home for a while. So to know what to anticipate. Yeah.
And I think that the value. Look at this photo, right? I think what we love about being a K-12 school is having these big boys and these little guys, right? I mean, I ran a student panel the other day, and or actually it was in the fall, and I was thinking of the same boy who did it for us recently. But in the fall, he said something. He said, when I was a little, when my 8-year-old Austin, he said, looked at, all I wanted to be was, to be that big boy. And it's because his advice to visiting families was, if you really want to know how your son, you really want to know about a school, look at the big boys, because that's what the product of the school is. So you look at them, look at what they're doing, look at how they're engaging, and then you can tell how what your son will benefit from, right? So if John Body, our head of school, also says, the fact that we have these big guys, little guys together just brings out the humanity all around. So we have community days where we intermingle. I talked about Panthers Connect. There is nothing like watching a little guy just look up at a big boy and a big boy taking care of a little one. So this is one of our games. We call it the zoo, which is our cheering section. So as anybody who turns up and is in the Panther Zoo, we're cheering for the Panthers. That's our cheering section. So
do they do any academic stuff together, like any? But there was a question: are there like book buddies or book clubs or?
Yeah. So in the lower school, our they have something called the 4th grade buddy. So a 4th grader will pair with a kindergartner, and they'll get together once a week. And sometimes they play games. And I have to say, most of the time they play chess. Like they just love chess. There are other games that available to them, but they always want to play chess. Or they'll read a book. Book Buddies is a program that I believe one of our rising seniors is trying to resurrect. It was extremely popular a few years ago, and then the boy graduated, and so there was no student leadership there. But then there's another boy who wants to pick that up. I will share that most recently, so our seniors are invited to do a service learning project the last 3 weeks of their time with us. And right now we would have been in the middle of that. But of course they are not able to go onto community due to our situation right now. But what they did as a class was they developed classes. So they decided they wanted to teach middle schoolers. So they developed these classes that will run for 3 weeks, and the middle school students can sign up for these classes. So you have this authentic kind of interaction that is actually run by the seniors, and they're more likely than not running in pairs. So 2 boys will pair up to teach a class to a group of middle schoolers. It's I love that was the way they chose to give back to the school. in that sense.
So I have another question because we're about to close this soon. We're finished at 5:10, so maybe like about 7 minutes. So a really interesting question. So mom has a daughter who's on the single sex track, and is wondering, should she keep a similar track for her son? Do you find that most of the boys at Browning, if they have siblings, they're also in single sex schools? Is there some sort of a trend? Is that kind of?
I'd say that many of our students' siblings are in a girls' school. And the value proposition for a girls' school may be slightly different than that of a boys' school, right? And I am all for it, because as a product of a girls' school, and I know that when I was in a girls' school, we weren't talking about girls' education the way we are today, and I wish we were. And so I do think that I'm very much in admiration of what girls' schools are trying to accomplish for gender equity, and to raise young women who are going to become really phenomenal. I know they will. And I think for our boys, it's that they are just as much a part of that story. I think that the point of, in a boys' school, and when we're talking about those changing gender norms and expectations in the Me Too world, right? It's like, don't be that guy, and it's not enough to not be that guy. You need to be an upstander. And so I think that is very much tied to who we are trying to be at Browning. I can't speak for every boys' school. I know that is at the core of what we are trying to be at Browning.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. What does social justice look like? What does diversity, equity, and well, you talked about, the different affinity spaces that you have for your students, but what does, especially what we have going on in the world right now, right? Like, of course we're dealing with COVID, and now we're dealing with, this continuous racism, death, when you think of boys of color, right? Like, how are boys of color nurtured at a school like Browning?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that, independent schools are predominantly white institutions. Okay, so there's that, and we are coming out of a legacy of that. And but there is also a dedication on the side of independent schools to make sure that our school communities are reflective of the world, and that every boy feels a sense of belonging here. There's work to do on that front, right? I mean, I think one of the memes I saw is it's not nice. Being nice is not enough. You need to be, or being not a racist is not enough. You need to be anti-racist, right? So I think about we have a white anti-racist educators group that met this morning to discuss the very thing that's happening right now in the world, right? And the complexities of between, what happened to George Floyd versus, all the riots that were happening, and then, and it's causing people to kind of see this issue in dichotomy. There's also this, how do we balance our perspectives between the protests that are happening this weekend versus the protests in states like Michigan over the shutdown? How those conversations are important to have with our boys. An email had gone out this morning to the faculty, first addressing this and giving some folks some resources, and then the white anti-racist group met this morning to meet. Our faculty is engaged in all faculty. I'm going to call it diversity training, but it's so much more than that, because equity work begins with me, right? Like, each of us have to do our own work in order to understand what another person's experience is. So our diversity training is really about working on our own racial autobiography. So understanding our own experiences from our perspective of race. So if I was white, how was my life privileged, right? So it's to lead to an understanding that race matters, and race matters all the time.
Yes.
If you are not a person of color, you are always privileged. So I think it's that sort of thing that we're trying to talk to the faculty, and then from there talking to the boys and helping the boys feel that they are heard. I will also share that several of our common books, so we do common reads over the summer. One book that we read was Just Mercy, and this was back in 2012 or 2013. And it was, and that's by Brian Stevenson.
Yes.
one of our seniors last week, when he was asked the question, what are two books that you loved reading in your time here? He named Just Mercy, and then another boy named Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. And I thought, and these were white boys who shared that. So I was actually really proud that, they felt the impact of reading a book that was a window into another view. There will never be a good answer for that very important question. I think.
No, I appreciate your you sharing what community within community looks like. That's really important. I mean, when I think about the work that we're doing with RISE, we are centering families of color. So these are some of the questions that we want to ask. We're not sure we should ask during the admissions process, but I think it's very important when you are looking at a community to invest in, right? To be a part of, to help create legacy at. So it's really good for me to hear that there was anti-racist work going on with your students, your boys today.
Yeah.
Because, Gina talked about, I don't know if you were able to be in the beginning. She's like, I don't want allyship. I want co-conspirators. I was like, because my head of school just wrote about allyship. And I was like, yeah. And, I was like, oh, now I'm like, no, we got to go back. No, that has to be a co-conspirator. That's you have more. You're putting your feet to the fire. That means you're willing to give up something that privileges you, right? So that there is the equity there. So
yes.
And
listen, I mean, the boys are ever evolving, right? So I think that, I was proud that by the time these boys were seniors, they were able to be retrospective about their journey. I don't know if as ninth graders, they would have seen it that way, right? So I think that we just have to understand that they are continually growing, and we never lose a moment to work with them on that. So
the parent says that they do like the idea of the anti-racist education. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And I guess if I had just one more thing to share about Browning, I would say that it is a school, and I hope it's been evident so far, is that we are really focused on relationships. And without these relationships, we couldn't function. And I think that we can form that because of I always say it's down to two things: our size, and the fact that we're in all boys schools, and it's all boys school, and we're talking about relationships, not just from teachers to students, but the boys to boys across grade levels with other schools. Every year at graduation, I cry buckets because I think that I'm gonna miss these seniors. There's not gonna be no one like them. And then the next year, I feel the same way about the next group of seniors. And it's that sort of place, right? And that's why I'm still here. I mean, I never thought I would be at the same school for 15 years, but here I am. We pride ourselves in that. I think that is really the bottom line. And the reason for our online learning, any success that we've had in the online learning platform has been the result of building these relationships with the boys and for the boys with one another. So I would say that in closing, I would say that we invite you to browse our website, to check out, we have a virtual tour. It is a pretty basic tour, but it gives you some snapshots into school life. We've got loads of videos up online as well, because we've been running virtual events. And so all of them are recorded like this session and posted. And we have a couple more. So if you'd like to register, they are available there as well. We have been putting up weekly admission tips, and these are general in nature. So some of it applies to our school. Some of it we say check with the school to which you're applying about X, Y, or Z. And if you're curious about our online learning program, which we call Browning Connect, please do check out those pages as well. We have several exciting extensions. We are launching Inquiry at Browning Connect, which is where we let the boys make proposals about things they want to learn about and things they want to study. And we teachers will volunteer to work with them, to be their mentor as they learn their new skill or their new topic. And then we are also going to launch Summer at Browning Connect this summer, just to kind of extend the learning process into the summer a little bit for families. Yeah.
So I'm sorry. So one parent said that her brother is an alum. It's a really good school. So you know what my question is to her? I said, that's awesome. I said, we hope he goes back to mentoring.
Oh,
men of color come back. And I know we're running, listen, folks have to get to the next session. So we do have a 5-minute break in between, but I'm just hoping, do they come back? The young men of color, do they come back?
Oh yeah. So we have somebody who went on to play, I don't remember which division, but it was college basketball, Franklin and Marshall. I think it's Division 3 basketball. And he's actually he's the coach of our junior varsity team right now.
Okay, good.
And then this year when we went to the basketball championships, we had our Panthers Zoo was made up of alums. It wasn't just students and parents. It was like the alums came out as well. So they definitely come back and stay engaged. And they our boys of color, they are open. They will share with us. They'll tell us, here's something we got to work on, and they will tell us, and we give them the forum for that, and we try to put things into action.
Okay, hard stop. So thank you all for hanging in there. You're amazing families. I hope you go on to see another school right now, that session will start in 5:15. You go back to the virtual lobby to get your link, and you and I do this dance again. Okay?
That sounds good.
We come off here and then we good on the next link, okay?
Sounds good. All right. Really appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Okay, so you know what your next link is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll see you there.
Thanks, Gina.
Oh, thank you. Bye.